threats, vandalism, and a son who breaks. I slipped the copies into mailboxes, and the truth spread like wildfire, but not everyone wanted it out. The forces behind Karen were dangerous. I made copies of the financial records Ms. Gable had given me, dozens of them. I didn't write a long explanation, just a highlighted section showing the payment to Lakeside Security and a handwritten note beside it. Ask Karen who owns this company. That night, under the cover of a moonless sky, I became a ghost. I walked the quiet streets of Crystal Shores, slipping the folded papers into mailboxes, under windshield wipers, through mail slots and doors. I hit every house, every cabin, every resident. The next morning, the community woke up to the truth. The reaction was not the unified outrage I'd hoped for. It was fractured, messy, and dangerous. Some people, like old man Henderson, called me immediately, their voices shaking with anger, ready to march on the HOA office. Others were terrified. I received anonymous calls telling me to back off, that I was making things worse for everyone. A few even defended Karen, accusing me of forging the documents to cause trouble. The HOA's response was swift and brutal. An email blast went out to every resident, claiming the documents were fabrications created by a disgruntled former owner seeking to destabilize the community. It threatened legal action against anyone found spreading defamatory lies. Karen had seized the narrative, using fear to keep people in line. I felt the ground shifting under my feet again. My one piece of hard evidence was being dismissed. As a forgery, I was being painted as the villain. I needed something irrefutable. I needed someone on the inside. I thought of Travis. He had looked scared that night outside the office. He was in over his head. That afternoon, I took a risk. I waited near the community's fitness center, knowing he usually went there around 3. Sure enough, he pulled up in his expensive sports car. He looked pale, tired. He jumped when I stepped out from behind a tree. "What do you want?" he snapped, but there was no real force behind it. "I want to know if you understood what you were." "Sign in," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Those bank accounts in your name, the money from the HOA, do you know what that makes you? An accomplice to fraud, embezzlement. That's not community service, Travis. That's prison time." His bravado crumbled. He leaned against his car, running a hand through his hair. "She said it was just a tax thing," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "A way to pay me for helping out with security? She's my mom." I didn't think. I showed him one of the photocopies. "This isn't helping out, Travis. This is stealing from your neighbors. Old people on fixed incomes are paying dues that end up in your pocket." "And my cabin? Was that part of your pay too?" He flinched. "She said you abandoned it. She said the HOA could claim it. She said it would be mine, free and clear." His voice was full of a childish whine, the sound of someone realizing the gift they'd been given was actually a bomb. "I can't testify against my own mother," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "She'll get a lawyer. She'll throw you under the bus to save herself. I finished for him. You know she will. The only way out is through the truth. I'm not your enemy, Travis. The law is. And right now you're standing on the wrong side of it." That seed was planted. I left him there, looking lost and young and terrified. I didn't have his help yet, but I had planted the seed. The day of the emergency HOA meeting arrived. Karen called it with the kind of theatrical fury she specialized in. The clubhouse was packed, buzzing with nervous energy. Karen stood at the podium, flawlessly dressed, her face a mask of calm authority, but I could see the tremor in her hands. She gave a speech about the community being under attack, about lies being spread, about the need to trust leadership in difficult times. She was good. She almost sounded believable. Then she called me out. "And we have one person to thank for this division," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "Mark Palmer. A man who abandoned his property, refused to pay his fines, and now, when faced with the consequences of his own actions, has chosen to lash out at all of you with vandalism and slander." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Many looked at me with suspicion. She was winning. Then the doors at the back of the clubhouse opened. Travis walked in. The room fell silent. He looked terrible, pale, unshaven, his eyes red. Karen's smile faltered. "Travis." "Honey, what are you doing here?" he asked. Travis didn't look at her. He walked down the center aisle toward the podium, and turned to face the crowd. Everything she just said is a lie, he said, his voice shaky but clear. The financial records are real. Lakeside Security is a fake company she invented. The money went into an account she told me was for my future. She had me sign papers. So many papers. I didn't know. The room erupted. Karen stared at her son, her face a grotesque mask of shock and betrayal. "You don't know what you're saying," she cried. "He's confused. He's been manipulated by this criminal." She pointed a shaking finger at me. It was the wrong move. The desperation in her voice was undeniable. People started shouting, demanding answers. The meeting descended into chaos. In the midst of the uproar, a large man in a Lakeside Security jacket pushed his way toward the front. He wasn't coming to help her. His face was dark with anger. She clearly failed to pay him, or he realized the scheme was over and he was about to be exposed. Karen saw him coming, and her composure shattered completely. She grabbed her purse and tried to flee. Out a side exit, but the crowd blocked her way. It was over. Her reign of terror ended not with a legal ruling, but with the devastating testimony of her own son in a room full of the people she had stolen from. Travis walked in and said, "Everything she just told you is a lie." The room exploded, but they were cornered, and cornered animals are dangerous. Would you have had the courage to testify against your family? If you were Travis, would you take the stand against your own mother or protect family ties? Tell me below. The night they tried to rip it out. When the stakes got physical, they brought a tow truck and a winch. They meant to rip everything out. The night turned violent. The law showed up in force. The tension in Crystal Shores was a physical presence, a storm cloud waiting to break. The fence stood, immovable, a daily reminder of the standoff. Karen's emails became more unhinged, more desperate, full of capital letters and exclamation points about unity and outside agitators. She announced an emergency HOA meeting in the community clubhouse. Mandatory attendance. I knew it was a trap. It was her stage, her chance to discredit me in front of everyone and regain control. I had to go. I couldn't let her have the final word. The clubhouse was packed, buzzing with nervous energy. Cuz stood at the podium, flawlessly dressed, her face a mask of calm authority, but I could see the tremor in her hands. She gave a speech about the community being under attack, about lies being spread, about a need to trust leadership in difficult times. She was good. She almost sounded believable. Then she called me out. "And we have one person to thank for this division," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "Mark Palmer, a man who abandoned his property, refused to pay his fines, and now, when faced with the consequences of his own actions, has chosen to lash out at all of you with vandalism and slander." The crowd shifted uncomfortably, or many looked at me with suspicion. She was winning. Then the doors at the back of the clubhouse opened. Travis walked in. The room fell silent. He looked terrible, pale, unshaven, his eyes red. Karen's smile faltered. "Travis? Honey? What are you doing here?" Travis didn't look at her. He walked down the center aisle, toward the podium, and turned to face the crowd. "Everything she just said is a lie," he said, his voice shaky but clear. "The financial records are real. Lakeside Security is a fake company she invented. The money went into an account she told me was for my future. She had me sign papers, so many papers. I didn't know." The meeting descended into chaos. Karen saw her empire crumbling in real time. In the confusion, people were enraged, then stunned. That evening, a sleek black sedan swerved toward me as I walked along the fence line. I dove into the ditch as the car sped off. It was an attempt, an intimidation, a message that they weren't done. They came for the fence that night. Not with angle grinders this time, but with a massive flatbed tow truck fitted with a heavy-duty winch. The black sedan idled nearby, the man in the suit watching from the passenger seat. They meant to rip the entire structure out of the ground in one brutal act. I was waiting for them. After the attempt on my life, I knew it was their only move left. The fence was the symbol. It had to be destroyed. I wasn't alone. Joe was with me, and old man Henderson and a half-dozen other neighbors who had finally found their courage. We stood on our side of the fence. They stood on theirs. The tow truck driver hooked a massive chain around the central post. The winch began to whine, the chain tightening, groaning under the strain. The post started to bend. Stop right there. The voice wasn't mine. It was amplified. Sheriff's deputies, along with state police cars, flooded the area, lights painting the scene in swirling blue and red. Robert, my lawyer, stepped out of a cruiser holding a sheaf of papers. He was accompanied by a man in a state investigator's badge. "We got your package, Mark," Robert said loudly for everyone to hear. The financial records, the deed, the testimony. The state had opened an investigation into fraud, embezzlement, and attempted coercion. The man from the black sedan slowly got out, his hands raised in a gesture of calm innocence. "This is a simple property dispute, officer," he said smoothly. My clients are merely seeking to remove an illegal obstruction." The state investigator stepped forward. "Your clients, meaning the principals of Golden Pine Developments, are the subject of that investigation. And you, sir, are now implicated in the attempted destruction of evidence and witness intimidation. I'd suggest you remain silent." The man's smug facade cracked. The winch was shut off. The tow truck driver looked terrified. It was over. The police led arrests. The tow truck was impounded. Karen's car screeched up. She leaped from it, hair wild, screaming incoherently about her rights. She fell to her knees in the mud, sobbing, her perfect world in ruins. The fence stood, scarred but unbroken. It was no longer just a boundary marker. It was a monument. The winch was shut off, and the tow truck driver looked terrified. It felt like the last move had been blocked. But with people that desperate, there are always more moves. Would you have stood by the fence that night? Would you risk physical danger to protect your land? Or would you back down and fight in court? Tell me your choice below. The line in the sand. The court came, the charges came, and the price of victory became clear. The fence stayed, but nothing returned to how it was. As the police took custody of the men who tried to remove the fence, the scene finally quieted. The following days were a blur of interviews, depositions, and public hearings. The state investigators' work revealed a pattern larger than Crystal Shores, a network of corrupt HOAs and shell companies that had quietly been harvesting property value and pocketing dues. Karen Dwire was formally charged with a litany of crimes: fraud, forgery, embezzlement, and coercion. She resigned from the HOA and her house went up for sale. The state investigator discovered her scheme was part of a larger operation. The mysterious Golden Pine Developments had been using aggressive HOAs as a tool to acquire valuable properties on the cheap all across the state. My cabin was officially returned to me. The first thing I did was change the locks. The second was to throw every piece of furniture Travis had brought into a dumpster. I found my father's armchair in a storage unit Karen had rented. I sanded down the gouge in the pantry wall, but left the faintest visible trace, a scar to remember the fight. The HOA was dissolved by a unanimous vote of the residents. In its place, we formed a loose lake association with real transparency and voluntary dues. The old rules were tossed out. The security gate was removed. The community slowly began to heal, but the innocence was gone. We were wiser, more cautious. Never pressed charges against Travis. He testified against his mother and the development company, providing crucial evidence that sealed their cases. He moved away, and I heard he started a landscaping business in another state. The black steel fence still stands. It doesn't enclose the HOA office anymore. That building was sold at auction to help repay the stolen funds and is now the community library. But the section that cuts across the old road remains. The county officially rerouted the road around it. It's a tourist attraction now, a strange landmark people come to see and take pictures with. They call it the line in the sand. I still live in the cabin. The loons still call across the water at dusk. But the peace is different now. It's a peace that was earned, fought for, and defended. Sometimes, sitting on the porch my grandfather built, I look at that fence and I don't see anger or revenge. I see a promise. A promise that sometimes, to protect what you love, you have to draw a line so bold and so brazen that no one will ever dare cross it again. And the strange thing is, everyone respects the line. Even the new people, especially the new people. The fence still stands. It's not just metal, it's the story of what we're willing to protect. If you had to choose between peace and proof, Which would you pick? Would you leave the fence as a permanent reminder or tear it down and try to heal the community? Tell me why in the comments. And if you want more episodes like this, submit your story and watch the full series.